My pregnant ex-wife and her husband expected our 16-year-old daughter to handle all the housework. She finally refused to go back to their home. I, 40 male, have a daughter, Jade, 16, female, with my ex-wife, Margot, 38, female. Margot and I met when I was 21, and she had just turned 19. We met at our friend's party, and we got along really well. I asked her out the day we met because she was really smart and pretty, and I really liked her. Fortunately, she said yes that day, and we ended up together for a really long time. We dated for a couple of months before we met each other's families. And then, eventually, after almost a year of dating, we decided to move in together. Margot went to college nearby and had been living on campus, but I asked her to move in with me in my apartment, and she agreed. This is important because later on, she would blame me for everything that went wrong and insist that it was my fault that she didn't have a career of her own. She was more than happy to move in with me in my apartment, and I didn't have to. Ask her twice. We started living together, and everything was going great. Our families approved of each other, and we were in love. Everything was perfect. But then, shortly after her graduation, Margot found out that she was pregnant. Again, let me just make it clear to everybody that she was the one who wanted to keep the baby, something she would blame me for in the next several years to come. I was okay with whatever decision she made because it was her body and I didn't think I would have a problem with anything. But, of course, when she decided that she was going to keep the baby, I was thrilled. I was 24 at the time and was working in a marketing and advertising firm. I had decent pay and I could afford to take care of the household expenses and a baby. But unfortunately, I would not have been able to afford childcare at the time on my salary. And Margot had just graduated, so she had no work experience, and I couldn't ask her to find a job while she was pregnant. So we had a lot of discussions about it, and we decided that she would stay at home and raise our child while I worked. I think I must have asked her if she was sure about that decision more than 1 billion times. Of course, it made me feel really guilty. I did not want her to have to give up her career because of me and the baby, but she said that she was fine with it, and she just wanted to start a family at that point. She was a really bright student as well, and would have done really well career-wise if she had tried to look for a job at the time, but she didn't, and that was her choice. It's very important that I let everybody know that all these decisions we made, I had left it all up to her for the most part. I had never forced her or tried to convince her to do anything because I knew that she had the most to lose. Be it moving in with me, she would be the one having to make the move because, of course, I couldn't move into her college dorm. The decision to keep the baby and not terminate the pregnancy was also entirely hers because, again, she would be the one who would have the most to lose. She would be carrying the baby. Again, she would be the one unable to find a job after graduation, which was the most crucial time. So I had never talked to her or tried to convince her to do anything that wasn't in her best interest. Even the decision that she made about being a stay-at-home mom was all hers as well, and I was just there to support her along the way. But unfortunately, just when the going got tough, she started blaming me for everything. A couple of months after our daughter was born, she started exhibiting symptoms of postpartum depression, and I decided to talk to her parents so they would convince her to start therapy. I'd already tried to talk to her about it myself, but she told me that it was nothing and would get really irritable whenever I would bring it up. If I'm being honest, I was just really scared that she would end up doing something to the baby out of anger or something because I've heard stories. So I really wanted her to get help, but she was not willing to admit that she had any problems at all. Now, I know that raising a child is a really difficult job, and no matter what is happening now, I will always be grateful to her for doing her best at the time. However, I still have to say that she had become a really difficult person to live with in the years following Jade's birth. She would constantly be mad at me, and in the first couple of months, I could understand the logic behind it. I expected it to go away with time, but even after almost a year or two had passed, she still seemed to be mad at me all the time. We couldn't even talk to each other without everything turning into a fight. And I always felt like she was looking for an excuse to fight or argue with me. She would snap at me for the smallest reason, And even though I would let it go most times, it was really difficult to do so because I was doing my best at work. After slogging for more than half the day at work, nobody enjoys coming back home to a perpetually annoyed and angry wife. With time, I found it harder and harder to let things go or just drop a fight, and it would just keep escalating. She would always keep blaming me for everything that went wrong in her life, and I could never understand why. I've already mentioned that all the choices she had made were completely her own, and I had never tried to influence them. But even then, every time we were arguing, she would bring up how she had sacrificed everything for me, and I couldn't even be grateful to her for that. I don't know where she got that from, because I was always looking for opportunities to make her realize that. I was grateful for everything she had done for me and our family. I would organize dates every weekend and try to take them out for dinner at least 4 times a month to fancy places because I knew how much Margot enjoyed it. I would celebrate every milestone with great pomp and extravagance, but nothing ever seemed to be enough for her. She would still keep complaining about how I was just never grateful, even when I would take her out for dates and stuff. She would keep looking for excuses to fight with me, and would never just be in the moment and try to enjoy it. It was all getting frustrating for me because I was sick of getting blamed for every single thing. It had come to a point where I was regretting ever even meeting Margot or even asking her out, even when I would bring up valid points during fights. She would just negate all of it by saying that she had sacrificed her career to raise our daughter. I had promised to support her, so I just had to shut up and deal with it. But I don't think constantly having to be a doormat for her to walk all over was my definition of support. I still put up with it, though, for the sake of my daughter, because I didn't want Jade to suffer. We stayed in that marriage for almost 5 years, and with each year, the fights got worse, and it became harder for me to put up with Margot. A couple of months after Jade had turned 5, I came to the conclusion that I could no longer make this marriage work. After a particularly nasty fight, I realized that Jade deserved a better life, and we couldn't provide that for her if we stayed together. By then, Margot and I were either always fighting or just not even talking to each other, and that's a hostile environment to grow up in, which is something I did not want for Jade. I had always figured that after one point, Margot and I would go back to being a happy couple, but by then, I had given up all hopes of that ever happening. The future of our marriage seemed really bleak, and so getting a divorce was what was best for the family. One day, I decided to drop Jade off at my parents' and talk to Margot at home. I told her that this was not working out, and our daughter deserved better, so we should really start thinking about divorce. I didn't have any idea what she was going to say, but I surely didn't expect her to confess to cheating on me. She told me that she had been having an affair for the past, and had been hooking up with a coworker of mine whom she had met at a work party that she had accompanied me to. That made things a lot easier for me, and I didn't feel any guilt leaving her. I had also fallen out of love with her by then, but it still came as a huge shock. The divorce was mutual, and I got pretty much everything. She didn't even try to fight me for it, because she knew that what she had done was wrong, and there was no taking it back. So she let me have everything, and she got the bare minimum in the divorce settlement. She didn't even ask for alimony, because having an affair already disqualified her from it. The one thing that she did put up a fight for was Jade. She fought tooth and nail to get partial custody and work out an arrangement that suited both of us. I had wanted Jade to spend 3/4 of the month with me, and Margot would have her for 1 week, but she was not okay with it. She and her lawyer fought really hard and pushed it up to half the month because she was not ready to settle for anything less than that. I had to concede because I didn't want to exact revenge on her or anything through Jade. I wasn't going to fall that low. And at the end of the day, she was her mother, and I couldn't take Jade away from her, because that would always mean that Jade would grow up to resent me for it, and I couldn't risk it. It's just ironic to think that after fighting for Jade so hard, this is how Margot has been treating her after the divorce came through. It was easy for us to fall into a co-parenting arrangement because now we didn't have to deal with each other constantly anymore. I felt like my life had changed for the better after the divorce because I could finally do everything that I had always wanted to. do without walking on eggshells around Margot. It was a huge relief, and I actually even quit my job to start my own business because that's something I had been thinking about for a really long time. Besides, I don't think I could have continued to work there, knowing that the guy who had broken up my marriage just sat a few desks away from me. Working there during my divorce was hard enough. I didn't want to continue it even afterward. I know for a fact that the two of them broke up shortly after Margot announced our separation online, because she was the one who told me about their breakup while apologizing to me for everything once again. But at that point, the apology and everything meant nothing to me. I just stayed in touch with her because we had to co-parent Jade. Had it not been for her, I would have had no reason to talk to her ever again. But anyway, we kept the contact to a minimum after the divorce. And even until today, we don't talk unless it's absolutely necessary. It's been more than a decade since our divorce, and both of us have moved on completely. She got married a couple of years ago to a guy whom we'll call Shane. From what I know, my ex-mother-in-law set her up with that guy, and they got married after about 2 years of dating. I'm not sure. My ex-mother-in-law set her up with that guy, and they got married after about 2 years of dating. I'm not sure, but I think he's an architect, and I've heard good things about him. Good for her, I guess. I have also had my fair share of flings and casual relationships, but nothing too serious. Right now, nobody wants to date a guy with a teen daughter. But a couple of months ago, all of us received a huge shock when Margot announced that she was pregnant for a second time. Of course, given her age, I thought that it was a little risky, but it's not my place to say anything. Besides, plenty of women go for a late pregnancy now, with all the advancements in the medical field, and I honestly wish the best for her. The least I could do was congratulate her, and that's exactly what I did. I left it at that, and she thanked me for it. That was all the interaction that I had with her when she first announced it about 4 months ago. But after that, I started noticing that Jade would always be very reluctant to go stay with Margot, and she would always seem very tired and unhappy whenever she would come back. I didn't think much of it at first, and even Jade told me that she was just tired from school and stuff like that. That it had nothing to do with Margot, and I believed her. This had been going on for the past couple of months, ever since the pregnancy announcement, and I only recently picked up on it. This month, when Jade came back to live with me, I realized that she looked even more exhausted than usual, and I knew that something was off. I decided to talk to her and ask her what was going on, but she refused to tell me anything for the first couple of days. She insisted that everything was just fine, but I could tell that she was hiding something from me. So after a lot of insistence, she finally agreed to tell me what was bothering her, and ever since then, things have pretty much taken a turn for the worse. Jade told me that her mother and Shane had pretty much started to treat her like their free housekeeper, and were making her do all the work around the house every day after school. As soon as she would be back, she would be expected to start cooking, and once she was done with that, they would demand that she start cleaning the house from top to bottom. The worst part was that all of them lived like slobs, because for part of the month that she wasn't living with them, they were just not clean at all. They would wait for her to come over, and then they would start making her do all the work. She said that she couldn't even say no because every time she would protest something and say that she didn't want to do it because she didn't have the energy, Margot would play the pregnancy card and start whining about how I had never been helpful when she was pregnant with Jade. But this time around, she had expected things to be different and hoped that her daughter would be more sensitive than her husband. Margot couldn't do anything because apparently she was always too tired, even though she was just in her second trimester, and even that had barely started. Shane claimed that he was always exhausted after work, which is why he couldn't help out. So, unfortunately, they were relying on her to do all the work around the house. Margot even claimed that, apparently, this was not even that much to ask of Jade because it wasn't like she was having to do everything for her throughout the month. They would have to do everything for themselves when she was living with me. Jade had not been happy about any of this, but she had to do it because she didn't want to feel guilty that she was abandoning her pregnant mother. So she kept doing it without complaints. And it was a pretty thankless job too. She only put up with all of it because Margot was pregnant, and she didn't even tell me anything because she was afraid that I would get mad and then there would be a whole thing about it. She wanted to avoid that drama because it would inevitably lead to a lot of stress for her mother, and that would not be good. But she finally realized that she couldn't go on like this after something that took place a day before she came. Back home, she said that she had been trying her very best to not think of Margot and Shane as bad. But after what Shane had said to her the day before she came back home, she didn't think that she could go back there again because they had officially taken things way too far. Apparently, the day before she left, she had been packing her things in her room, and Shane happened to walk past. When he noticed that she was packing her things, he asked her why she was doing that, and she told him that she was going to move back here for the next 2 weeks because her time was up here, and it was my turn according to the arrangement. Shane hadn't realized that the time had passed by so quickly, and he made a comment about how he was going to miss her because now, for the next 2 weeks until she came back, the house would be a mess again. He said that he had been considering hiring a housekeeper just for the 2 weeks that she wouldn't be living with them, and then laughed about it as if it was a joke. When Jade asked him to elaborate, he told her point blank that, as of now, she was just a glorified housemaid to him. But apparently, he said that it was meant to be a compliment because she was really good at it. And he thought that she could actually make a career out of it since she would at least be useful then, unlike her mother. I was honestly stunned when Jade told me that this is what Shane had said because I had only heard good things about him from other people. But that was the single most misogynistic and disgusting thing I had ever heard. It was really difficult for me to control my temper at that moment. But Jade told me that she had already made up her mind and she was not going to go back. So there was no need for me to confront them or whatever. But I couldn't let something like this just slide, and I knew that I had to talk to Margot about it. I called her up after about an hour and told her everything that Jade had said to me, including the comment that Shane had made. I demanded an answer and an explanation as to why she thought any of it was appropriate, because my blood was boiling. They had been treating our daughter like she was a housemaid for weeks now, and Margot had been encouraging it. It was simply unacceptable because she was a school student, and there was no reason for her to work twice as hard as anybody else. I could still forgive Margot for not doing any work around the house because maybe it was really that difficult for her since she was pregnant, but I couldn't see any reason why her husband couldn't help out. If my year-old daughter can do all the work around the house and go to school and not let her schoolwork suffer, I think a full-grown man should be able to accomplish the same thing without making much of a fuss about it. Also, let's not forget that he is the adult in the situation, and it's insanely unfair to make a literal child do so much work without any help. It's almost criminal, and I could not let it go. But to my surprise, she just started laughing at it and said that it was no big deal. She said that she was sure Shane had meant it as a joke. It was not meant to be taken so hard. I could not believe that she was saying it and told her that, whether it was a joke or not, it was really insulting. And Jade and I didn't like it one bit. So then she told me that I needed to stop trying to create drama where there wasn't any and made it sound like I was the one who was overreacting. I couldn't understand what was so funny about any of this, because not only had he insinuated that my daughter was just there to do all the work, but he had also implied that Margot herself was pretty useless. So, if not for her daughter's sake, she could at least have some pride and be offended for herself. But she thought that it was all a joke and it was no big deal. She tried to explain to me that this is how they talk to each other, and it's all fine because she knows that he doesn't mean it. And apparently, even if he does, she doesn't mind it because it's technically true, since she is just a stay-at-home wife and doesn't really do any of the heavy lifting apart from all the household chores. I was shocked that this is how she felt about herself now, because things had been pretty different when we were married. And she would constantly be talking about how much work she had to do around the house, and I respected her for it. But now it seems to me like she has lost all respect for herself, and I would not want my daughter to be around her anymore because she's lost the plot. So I told her that I didn't think she was fit to be a mother anymore, and that I prayed her next child would be a son because she was clearly not the right person to handle having a daughter. And then I hung up on her. That statement of mine has obviously not gone down well with anyone, because she and her family have been harassing me ever since. Because apparently they think that what I said was out of line, especially since I was saying it to a pregnant woman, and I should have been more sensitive. Jade also thinks that I should have just dropped it because she had already told me that she was not going to go back, and I had no need to speak to them because clearly they were all in over their heads. So Aida for telling my pregnant ex-wife that she was unfit to be a mother. Update 1. Hi. So it's been 4 days since I made my original post. Here and there have been a lot of comments. Most of you guys agree that I did the right thing, and I'm glad that you guys feel that way. A lot of you, however, have refused to believe that I was a good husband the first time around. Let me just say that I know what I was, and I know how supportive I had been throughout our marriage. It only fell apart because Margot wasn't ready to give us a chance to work. Otherwise, I could have cheated on her several times and said, "Oh, things are getting really tough. I need an outlet. And so I have to sleep with someone else outside of my marriage." But unlike her, I wanted to give our marriage a fighting chance because of Jade. And even when I filed for divorce, it had been for Jade as much as me. I appreciate the mindset that housewives deserve more appreciation, and I'm in 100% agreement with the fact that they do. I don't think Margot qualifies for it because, let's not forget, she literally cheated on me. That being said, I have decided that I didn't say anything wrong, and I do not owe her an apology. I also talked to Jade about it, and she told me that she would prefer not to be around her mother for the time being because if she thinks that what Shane said to her the day before she left was no big deal, then clearly they had very different ideas of how she should be treated. She did not want to go back to a place where she was not even given the bare minimum of love and respect, and I agree with her, so we have decided to file for full custody even though she's just going to be a minor for 2 more years. We want to ensure that for these next 2 years, Margot won't be able to screw us over in any capacity. Update to so my lawyer and I filed for full custody of Jade a couple of days ago, and yesterday Margot was served. Needless to say, she did not take it well and put me for full custody of Jade a couple of days ago, and yesterday Margot was served. Needless to say, she did not take it well and put me on blast online. She made a whole post about how I was the most insensitive man she had ever met, and that she regretted ever giving up anything for me. She once again accused me of ruining her life by forcing her to give up her career and blamed me for everything, just like she had been used to all her life. But this time, I was not going to take this. I took screenshots of it and sent it to my lawyer. And then I decided to respond to her in the comments and put out the whole truth so that everybody could see what a nasty liar she was. Of course, she disabled comments as soon as she realized that I had something to say because she was a coward. But that's exactly what I expected from her. I blocked her after that, and I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders now because I don't have to deal with this anymore. Whatever happens after this, we'll just duke it out in court and let it go. Update 3. Hello. So a quick update here. It turns out that we didn't need to get started with the proceedings for the renegotiation of the custody arrangement, because by some miracle, Margot had decided to sign away her parental rights over Jade. She notified me about it a couple of days ago, and my lawyer drew up the papers within a few days. I have to say I didn't see it coming because the first time that we were fighting for custody, she had been really up in arms. And like I said, she had fought tooth and nail for Jade's custody. Not only was she allowing Jade to be treated badly, but she was even ready to give up her custody because she had a new family now. And apparently her priorities were all different. In fact, she put it in an email and once again blamed it all on me. She believed that I was the one who had turned Jade against her and forced her to believe that Margot was a bad person and a bad mother. She accused me of poisoning her daughter against her and said that she hoped I was finally happy now because I was getting exactly what I had wanted all along. I had proven to everybody that she was a terrible mother, and Jade also believed it. I don't even know how this could be my fault, because it's not like I told them to treat Jade badly. She herself didn't want to live with Margot or Shane anymore, which is why she said that she would appreciate it if I had full custody. Terminating her parental rights altogether seemed a little extreme, but that was her choice, and so far, I'd never tried to stop her from doing anything that she wanted to, and neither was I going to do so now or in the future. When I told Jade about it, she seemed a little upset, but she told me that this was for the best and that she didn't mind. However, I have still decided to put her in therapy because I think it would do her a world of good. She has gone through enough, and really, the poor kid could do with some relaxation in her life. I would not wish a mother like Margot on anyone, but lucky for her, that's not going to be the case anymore. I just hope and pray that I can be a good single father to her now. She seems happy to be with me, and I hope that it remains that way.